All right, joined now by Anthony Irwin, host of Lakers Lounge. Anthony, thank you so much for hopping on. Really appreciate you taking the time. Uh, let's talk about the Lakers. Let's talk about a team where the record it's been fine. I wouldn't say it's spectacular. I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just kind of uh, a B or maybe a B minus at this stage of the season. Just I know it feels worse than expected right now, especially after the loss in Philly. You were talking about this before with me. It's the worst loss of LeBron's career from a point perspective, 44 points. What happened? Just tell me about what happened.
Well, uh, a lot. you know, um, so the game starts out. The Lakers are like relatively competitive. They're kind of hanging in there. I was kind of curious how AD was going to handle that game, seeing as Paul Reed of all people was firing shots at him, calling him a flopper and stuff while he plays on Joel Embiid's team. And I was like curious, like how that was going to look. And, AD starts out the game 8 points right off the bat, in the first quarter. A few jumpers in there, but it looked good, looked engaged, and I was, ready for a really fun game, it looked like. And then the Sixers go on like an 8-0 run. You figure, well, surely they'll call a timeout. Nope. They extend that to like a 12-2 run. Well, surely now, right? You got to call timeout. You're going to call. Nope. 16-2 run. All right. A timeout is coming, right? Like, Darvin, take your hands out of your pockets, call timeout, see how it goes. You don't even need if you want to keep your hands nice and warm and cozy in your pockets, you can keep them in there and yell at the referee timeout. Like, that's also an option. You can do that too. Nope, no timeout. It got to a 20-2 run, and finally a timeout was called, but it was because it was an under 3-minute TV timeout. So like, and then it just wasn't particularly competitive from there. The Lakers had their opportunities. I thought Joel Embiid picked up 2 early first quarter fouls, and the Lakers just like stopped attacking him. It was just kind of a mess of a game, and I think pretty indicative of a lot of what's ailed them this season. I know it's a weighted term, but they're a very entitled bunch coming into this year, where I think they thought coming into the season, because all they experienced last year together as a core was an incredible run through the end of the year, and then a run all the way to the Western Conference Finals. And I thought, I think that the organization basically thought, we'll just bring that back. Everybody comes back. Everything will be hunky-dory next year. And to a certain extent, against bad teams, that's been the case. But against good or engaged good teams, that has not been particularly pretty.
Yeah, that's usually the mark, right? Like it's usually if your starters are going against other teams' starters and they're good starters and they're always losing their minutes, then that's generally not a great indication of a good basketball team, a great basketball team. And I know that that's always the goal with Los Angeles. That's always you're never going to be satisfied for goodness. Like that's not how this market works. So uh, I was surprised that Austin Reaves was benched early on this year. That was something that kind of on the outside looking in, that was not something that I really expected to happen. He was obviously talked as way better than that, somebody who could be a part of a big three. For those that have not paid close enough attention, why did Austin Reaves get moved to the bench, and is it working?
So I'll answer the first part first. Essentially, D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reaves and LeBron James were all like reluctant to step on each other's toes while they were out there together. And you kind of expect that to a certain extent, right? They are 3 kind of ball heavy type players. They Austin and D'Lo can't really coexist in sets, right? One guy, you can coexist with LeBron. You can run pick and roll with LeBron, and you can run pick and roll with AD. But those 2 guys don't really get involved in their sets very much. And to start the season, on top of all of like the conditioning stuff and some of the fatigue that Austin and every other player who played in FIBA this summer was dealing with. It really looked like Austin. Like I don't know if you ever like have danced or paid attention to dancing or anything like that,
I
but
dabble.
but like you know how essentially like if you go to like a country bar and there's a line dance out there are the people who like know the dance, just boom 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 boom, and they do their twirls and stuff and they add to it and stuff as they can because they know they understand the dance that well. But then there are also the people who are there for the first time, who haven't danced that stuff before, haven't really heard that music even before in some cases, and you watch them, they're like watching everybody around them and they're trying to number their steps and stay with the rhythm of the song. And really, that's what the Lakers offense looked like while D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reaves were out there together, where they were like, every time they were doing something, they were looking over at the other, like, should I be here? Should I attack here? Should I pull this out and try to facilitate and set up the offense? And for Austin, he is very much, he's in the second year of his career, right? He is very much, or second or third, I forget. He's old for the amount of experience he has in the NBA. He is very much an attacking type player. The game looks best when he is just focused on attacking, getting the defense on their heels, and then facilitating once he has wider open passing lanes and stuff. And so essentially what the Lakers did in moving him to the bench was get him off of the floor with D'Angelo Russell a little bit more so that he could just, and then also play him against bench units so he could just attack. And he could just, he can just, approach the game as an attacker and handle things that way. And I would say that it has worked. He has looked a lot better. D'Angelo Russell has looked a lot better. A couple hiccups here and there along the way, as you would expect. But that move, while I understand why it was kind of surprising, I thought maybe if they would split them up, that D'Lo would move to the bench, mostly because I anticipate Russell eventually to be traded. And that way, whenever you trade him, Austin just remains your starting point guard, and it's easier to find a facilitator for the second unit. But they chose to go with Austin, in part because D'Lo was playing better. And like you said, it's just a continuation of an okay season to this point.
Yeah, I wonder if there's not ego's probably the wrong word here, but just like pedigree where you have been starting, you have been an all-star before, and like it's just probably easier to put somebody like Austin on the bench as opposed to
Mhm.
D'Lo, and like maybe that'll change. And I think they see Austin as a pretty malleable guy in general, so he's more so happy to be there as opposed to somebody like D'Lo, who I think probably has some expectations here. Um, we're
I'm pretty
basically
well
six.
connected as it pertains to Austin Reaves. And when I asked around, how's he taking it? How's he feel about this or whatever? Everybody I spoke to said that he was fine with it. He got it. Now it's just time to win back. The thing with moves like that is you better win, right? Like the problem when the Lakers moved Russell Westbrook to the bench was that the Lakers weren't still winning after they did it. And so he's sitting there saying, like, all right, I did the sacrifice and we still suck. So when are we changing it back? And in this case, the Lakers have at least stayed afloat.
Yeah, and it makes sense. They are still in a pretty good place. Like 11 and 8 is still fine. There's no problem there. Now, LeBron and AD have played 18 of those 19 games each, and I think that that's something that we talked about at the beginning of the year. Like, is the regular season workload going to be a concern? Is it going to be something where, hey, you got to make sure that those guys are healthy and ready for the playoffs? They have played a lot of time so far. Just have you noticed any concerns at this point early on in the season, or are you still kind of waiting for that?
I mean, the minutes load is not great, and the burden that both of those guys have to carry on both ends of the court. LeBron, basically, when LeBron isn't on the court, the offense falls off of a cliff, and the offense is already pretty bad, even when he's out there. The offense is really kind of concerning. Like if I was trying to you know tell the story of the first half of the season, I tweeted out these numbers the other day. I'll pull them up again, but the Lakers so far this season are only 10th in free throw attempts per 100 possessions. Last year, when they went on their crazy run, right? Everybody was pointing it out. They had an insane, yeah, they were not just first, but they were lapping teams, right? They were almost like zeroth in terms of
If it existed, they would be zeroth. That's for
yeah.
sure.
So they were shooting a crazy number of free throws, and that helps make up for some of the 3-pointers that they aren't attempting. But and so when they fall back to the pack there, it highlights again the Lakers again this season are 30th in 3-pointers attempted per 100 possessions, and they're 28th, I believe, in 3-point percentage. So you're already fighting the math with those two, the combinations of those three stats. The way that you could combat that stat is get yourself some extra possessions, right, through offensive rebounds or not turning the ball over. Problem is they're turning the ball over, the eighth most in the league with 15 turnovers a game, and they're only grabbing 8 offensive rebounds per 100 possessions. That is, I believe, like 29th
Yeah.
for the rest of the. So like if you were to try to isolate like why the Lakers are struggling, it's that combination of those 4 stats, and it's really basically that simple. The fact that they have been able to stay afloat and sit at 11-8 as they are that bad in those regards is a little shocking, and I think really a testament to how great AD is defensively and how great LeBron can be in close games and stuff. But and the way that they've beaten up on bad teams. So those stats are going to have to change if they're going to be a serious contender this year.
Getting back Jared Vanderbilt will help there. Like, he's a
Yeah,
hustle guy, an
offensive
offensive
boards.
rebounding guy, somebody who probably alleviates some of the pressure on AD and LeBron in the front court for sure. And then getting back Gabe Vincent, somebody who they really counted on, and like he's played 4 games. Like he hasn't been good in the games that he did play, but hopefully you could start to see some turnaround there, right?
I was making a face there because I just don't know when they'll get Gabe back.
Mm.
He has what's called a bone effusion, which is essentially swelling of the bone. And my wife is a physical therapist. And I, from time to time, I'll ask her about an injury that the Lakers are dealing with, right? And I told her that one of the guys is dealing with a bone effusion. And she goes, "Oh, God." And when I got that response, when I got that,
Not
she's seen some
exactly the
stuff.
response you're looking for in those situations.
Like, imagine talking to your doctor and tell him what all's going on. And your doctor comes back with, "Oh," like that's. So essentially, like with this bone effusion thing, the bone swells up, and it's a result of a contusion. It's some type of impact that took place. So it swells up the bone. So once the bone shrinks down, and it's really difficult to shrink down, to get that swelling out of the bone, you still are going to deal with a contusion, right? The initial bruise that led to the
Yeah.
swelling. And that can be kind of tricky depending on the amount of blood flow to the area. So, like when the Lakers say, yeah, he'll be reevaluated in 2 to 4 weeks or something like that, this is essentially what went on with Kendrick Nunn, where he had a contusion, and they were like, all
Mm.
right, we'll reevaluate him in a month. A month would go by. We'll reevaluate him in another month. Month would go by. And then eventually, like the reevaluations just stopped. Like they just like, oh, yeah, Kendrick is, he's over there somewhere. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that isn't what this becomes here with Gabe, but it's a very tricky injury that he's dealing with and coming back from it, and kind of have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, to your point, Jared will help with the offensive rebounding. The Lakers also, to this point, I just recorded with Aaron and Aaron Larsoul, who does All Access Lakers, and we do that together. He was basically saying that the coaching staff has basically told the Lakers, hey, don't push up on the glass because our transition defense has been terrible. And part of that actually is because of your dude Jokic. He realized AD takes his time getting back on defense sometimes. So the way that I'm actually going to attack him is get out in transition, get as many guys out in front of AD as we possibly can, and pick apart the Lakers when AD isn't anchoring the defense. And the rest of the league looked at that and was like, "Ooh, that
No.
sounds like fun." And everybody, everybody is doing that now to the Lakers. So it's going to be interesting here. The back and forth that I had with Aaron is like, you still need to create those extra possessions to offset some of those offensive issues that they've had so far, even if it comes at the cost of some transition points every so often. So I'm really curious what that balance is going to look like when Vando comes back, hopefully after this current road trip.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody like a Nikola Jokic is running in transition, Jared Vanderbilt's obviously not going to help that much when he's
Mm-mm.
out there, but it might help against a lot of guys, and especially your standard centers that are trying to do the same thing in those cases. So, like, look, I do think that Vanderbilt's a good player. I think he's not a great player, but he's somebody who fits into the ecosystem, does his job, and sometimes with when you're the Lakers, like if you miss a guy like Gabe Vincent, if you miss some other guys that aren't necessarily playing great, it's just about getting another body in there that you're familiar with that knows what they're doing. So hopefully that kind of rounds them into form a little bit on that end. Last thing I have for you, group play stage. Did you enjoy it kind of as an NBA fan and covering the Lakers? And can this team win it all?
I I would like the whole in-season tournament so much more if it wasn't for the courts. It's so
Mm,
hard for me to get by the courts, but in terms of like, I just feel like if you were a fan of the tournament coming into the game, I think it was a lot easier to identify. Boy, golly, these guys are playing so much harder. To which I would say, like, close games existed in the regular season before the in-season tournament, right? Um, so I think I guess ratings were up for those games, and I think that is the exact kind of thing that the league is looking for heading into their next media deal. Certainly a bit of a red flag that Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks before the next media deal. Like that was kind of interesting to me. That kind of
yeah,
flew below the
if
radar.
anybody is going to be kind of a red flag in that situation, it's probably the business guy, like that guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that struck me as a little interesting, but yeah, I think for the most part, it's a fun little wrinkle. It's a new thing for fans to kind of get involved with and get interested in. And I'm really curious how group or how now the knockout stage are going to go. Like, the yeah, unfortunately for the Lakers, their reward for winning their group is another game against the effing Suns. So like fantastic. Like all this in-season tournament has done for the Lakers is an extra game against like a top 5 team in the league. And if they win that one and win another one beyond that one, they might have to play an extra game for LeBron and Anthony Davis that they're probably going to care about with 500K on the line. So for me, just being like a basketball purist and somebody who's just like just focused on what can the Lakers do to win a championship, I'm sitting here like, yeah, I guess we'll have fun, but please, dear God, do not get hurt.
So just humor me. Was
Yeah.
there only 3 games like scheduled initially for like against the Suns and the Lakers, like between those teams on the schedule, or is this now a fifth game that they're going to play?
Yeah. It's like,
Huh. All
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I saw Nuggets fans getting kind of annoyed because they have to play
Yeah.
the Blazer or no, who was it? The
It's
Clippers.
the Rockets and the Clippers. They're playing them 7 times in the first 23 games.
Yeah. I would happily trade. Give me one of
Fair,
those games
fair.
against either of those teams, and I will give you this game against Phoenix.
You know what?
Happily.
I do like to complain. That's my jam. So if I did have to face this, if the Nuggets had to face the Suns, I'd probably complain about that too. So
Yeah.
totally understand. Hey, we'll see what happens. I know they'll be very competitive. That should be a fun one to track for sure. But he is Anthony Irwin, host of Lakers Lounge. Anthony, thank you so much for hopping in with me here, man. 6 weeks from now, all right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on kicking off this project.